Alrighty, YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get immediate draft reactions up. Today, I was at work all day. I made a community post earlier today that kind of mentioned that, I was kind of going to be reacting to all of the day 3 49er draft picks in one whole video. Obviously, because I wasn't able to kind of upload reactions to every single pick on day 3. However, the 49ers started off round 4 with pick 113, and they took Indiana defensive tackle CJ West. I loved this pick. He's a mauler with, a motor that just doesn't stop. He had an immense impact on the Indiana defense last year. He's got violent hands. He understands the angles that put him in the backfield snap after snap. He understands the angles to take. And he also has a good feel in the run game and talent in the run game that just can't be taught. So this could without a doubt be a home run type of pick for the 49ers here in round 4. This guy could absolutely outplay his draft spot. So I'm a big fan of the CJ West pick. He actually got a grade of an A, or the 49ers got an A for drafting him here in round 4. So big fan of CJ West. Again, they continued to hammer the run defense and the front seven. And that's definitely something that they needed to do, right? Like, given how last year went. Yeah. Big fan of that pick. CJ West is going to be a very productive player for the 49ers, and I cannot wait to see what he can bring. And then moving on, at pick 138 in the 4th round, they go with Ole Miss wide receiver Jordan Watkins. So I was wondering when they were going to take a wide receiver. I definitely think they should have taken an offensive guard a little early than what they did. They did end up taking one, and we'll get to that pick. But yeah, man, talking Jordan Watkins here. He's a pretty decent wide receiver. He's kind of projecting as a contributor to all 3 receiver spots in the 49ers offensive system. He's got, deep speed to play the X. He's got the wiggle and the toughness to play, the Z spot. And he's also got the explosion off the line of scrimmage and kind of the craftiness to kind of play in the slot. He did have hand issues. He did fumble a lot, which is obviously less than ideal. But he's a good run blocker. And that's what the 49ers look for in wide receivers. I do think this is a solid pick. Does he project as a standout to any of the, major receiver spots like the Z, the X, and the slot? Not necessarily, but I definitely think the Niners are looking for, receivers that are ready to play day one, and ready to be implemented in this offensive scheme day one. And I think when you look at Jordan Watkins, this could be a player that should be one, that can be one. So I do like the pick with Jordan Watkins here. I would have taken an offensive guard. I think Jordan Watkins is going to be a good player for a long time, though. And we'll see what happens there. And then going into round 5, pick 147, Kyle Shanahan finally gets his running back, and it's Jordan James from Oregon. And there's definitely some running backs in the draft that I would have rather took here. R.J. Giddens from Kansas State was actually on the board here in the 5th round, and that was definitely an intriguing running back. And there were some other guys that I liked a little more at this pick, but I do see why the 49ers like him. He's versatile. He's a really good blocker, number one, get that out of the way. He's got that one step and go explosion that, the 49ers look for in running backs. He's got. I definitely think when you look at the tape from Jordan James, me just kind of watching highlights, he's definitely got more acceleration than speed, it seems. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are reasons why, the 49ers liked him. There are some downsides to Jordan James, but there's downsides to every player that they took in the draft. So I don't know. Not a bad pick here in the 5th round. I didn't love the pick, but I do think he can be a solid backup depth type of running back, and that's what the 49ers need. And then here so staying in the 5th round at pick 160, they go with Marques Sigle. I think that's how you say his last name. He's a DB out of Kansas State. This is an all traits type of pick. I do think the 49ers could possibly view him as a box type of safety. He's a solid tackler. He's got great closing speed. He reminds you a little bit of Talanoa Hufanga when you watch tape on him and you watch highlights about him or of him. Obviously, Hufanga had pretty, he had some coverage deficiencies. I don't know if Sigle. I think what stands out the most from him is he's a solid tackler. I don't know how good he is in coverage. Obviously, I don't know how fast he really is. Obviously at the NFL level, we'll find out in a matter of time how fast Sigle is. But I like the pick here. You go with this safety. You need depth at the position with losing Hufanga. I obviously think that the 49ers view Malik Mustafa and Jair Brown as their starting safeties going into 2025, but Sigle could potentially have a good offseason, a good camp, and there might be some safety controversy. I don't think it's going to be with Malik Mustafa. I think he has a solidified job at safety for the Niners, but Jair Brown's a guy that, I think the 49ers think highly of. He had a really strong rookie year, but obviously didn't have the best. He didn't have the best sophomore year. So we'll see what happens with Sigle. I do like the pick there. I think there could be some value with taking him where they did. And then in round 7, with pick 227, they go with Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback. I'm a big fan of Rourke. I live in Indiana, so obviously, I caught, a handful of Indiana football games, hence to why I'm such a big fan of the CJ West pick. But Rourke is, he had a very strong, I want to say he threw like 29 touchdowns last year to 5 picks. I definitely think every team should take a 7th round quarterback. And I think Rourke's a good option, or he's as good as an option for anybody. Or as good as an option for the 49ers here as anybody else. He's definitely a Kyle Shanahan type of quarterback. He can rip it down the seam. He's accurate. He's tough, and he's smart, and he's got just enough mobility, I think, to kind of fit that Kyle Shanahan type of quarterback. So, obviously, I do think he got embarrassed by the 2 quality defenses that he faced this past year in Ohio State and Notre Dame. And you definitely can't unsee that. And I do think that's why he was probably available here in the 7th round. But Kyle Shanahan likes him. He's going to come in and be the 3rd quarterback behind Mac Jones. And I think he can learn a lot from guys like Purdy and Mac Jones. But I like the value here. I like Rourke as a quarterback, and I definitely think he could develop into a solid backup quarterback for years to come. You never know what could happen with quarterbacks in the draft. I mean, for God's sake, Purdy was the last pick in the entire draft. So you never know what could happen in the draft with quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders, man, what a slide that was for him to not be taken until the 5th round. It was wild to me, but clearly there were scouts and executives that didn't view him like everybody kind of hyped him up to be. So, yeah, I do like the Rourke pick though. And then moving on to pick, what was the next pick here? Let me see. Got a little bit of a problem here. The next pick's not popping up. Let's see. Moving on to let's see here. So, okay, let's go to ESPN since that's not one to pull up. Okay, here we go. So after Curtis Rourke, they went finally with an offensive guard, and it was Connor Colby from Iowa. You know, they did this with literally the one of their last picks in the draft. You know, it's not a tackle, but it was an experienced player who could challenge for playing time on the interior side of the offensive line, where the 49ers by far have a problem at. He started 50 games for Iowa. Most of them was at right guard, but he should have some flexibility to kind of work along the interior. And I do think his best path to a roster spot, and a lot of people kind of said this when he was drafted, but it is to likely show that he can play center in addition to playing guard as well. So I do like the pick there. Finally, they get an offensive lineman here in the 7th round at pick 249. And then the final 49ers draft pick was, again, round 7, 252 overall. It was Junior Bergen, wide receiver out of Montana. Look, they took another flyer on a speedy, smaller wide receiver. You know, I think with Bergen and Jordan Watkins, obviously Jordan Watkins, who they took from Ole Miss in the 4th round, you know, they added some depth and some competition at wideout, obviously, as they kind of prepare for the uncertainty that they have at the position entering the 2025 season. One thing good about Bergen, he's an accomplished punt/kick returner whose best path to a roster spot will likely come on special teams for the time being. But again, I mean, you know, they needed depth at wide receiver, especially with Brandon Ayuk, you know, going to be out for an extended period of time going into 2025. There is obviously that hope and that possibility that he could be ready to go by week 1. I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be more time, but this is a depth piece, kind of like the Watkins pick. I mean, again, they're kind of preparing for the uncertainty that they have at the position entering the season. So, overall, I like the draft, dude. I mean, I really like what they did. Really in like the first, like rounds 1 through 4, I loved. You know, obviously when you get to like round 5, you kind of start taking flyers on people. Now, however, the 49ers got George Kittle in round 5, so some of these flyer type of players, you know, obviously Jordan James, he's not going to really see any, you know, much playing time, if any at all. But you look at a guy like Marques Sigle from Kansas State. I mean, they had a sneaky need at safety. He brings speed to the back end. He did run a 4.37 40-yard dash at the combine. Obviously, it's always different in the NFL, kind of seeing how fast that player is. But it'll definitely give them a chance to kind of push for a role at free safety as they kind of go through their options in the back of their secondary. But I really, really love what they did. Really from the first pick to the 4th round. I mean, those are some – they got a nasty front 7 going into the 2025 season. Obviously, the Upton Stout pick, I'm a little shaky on that one. He kind of reminds me a lot of K'Wan Williams. He fits kind of like the nickel corner that Robert Saleh likes, so I do see why they went there. But man, like the Nick Martin pick, I liked. Alfred Collins, I loved. Really, Nick Martin, I loved. I really liked all these picks from the first round to like the fourth round. And then obviously when you got to 5 and to the fifth round, the seventh round, there were some shaky picks that, you're at this point you're kind of taking flyers on people just to kind of hope that they work out. I wish they would have took an offensive lineman a little earlier. But hey man, I think they had a solid draft. I think they're going to probably find 3 to 4 guys that are day one starters in this draft. And I think it's definitely going to be obviously Michael Williams. Alfred Collins is going to be an immediate starter. I think Nick Martin has a good chance to beat out D Winters and to start alongside Fred Warner. And then you go down the list. Upton Stout could see an extended period of playing time in 2025 at nickel. CJ West, that's also a guy that I could absolutely see being a very key rotational piece within this defensive line. So let me know what you guys think of the day 3 picks from the 49ers in the comments down below. Obviously, I'll be making more videos kind of talking about and recapping the draft and whatnot. But yeah, I thought they had a phenomenal draft. I thought they did exactly what they needed to do, address the front 7, address the trenches. Yeah, I would have liked, 1 or 2 offensive linemen, but they clearly feel good with guys like Ben Barch and Colton McKivitz. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but let me know your guys' thoughts on the draft in the comments down below. As always, go Niners. I'll see you guys in the next one.